but I'd like to join my good memories of The Outer Limits and talk about Bram Stoker and give you some fascinating information about Bram Stoker's life, plus a little something from Dacre and an interview with him that I think you'll find absolutely fascinating and might inspire you to pick up some of these interesting biographical sources that they've produced about this amazing figure of Bram Stoker. So let's talk about it. All right, I love it. That's great. Let's go with The Outer Limits control voice.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. I always say all right after that. I'll have to do something else like right all or something. I don't know. But that is, of course, The Outer Limits, opening with the control voice. And let's go to a twofer. This is two authors in one segment. We've got the Stokers. First, I want to show you a picture of my friend Dacre Stoker. Dacre's a great guy, originally from Canada, and I believe he lives in the United States now. And Dacre, as you can see, according to fantasticfiction.com, a Canadian citizen and resident of the U.S., is the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker, who, of course, is actually named Abraham Stoker. He is also the godson of H.G. Dacre Stoker, the commander of the AE-2 submarine, whose tactics were instrumental in Gallipoli in World War I. Dacre, who now calls Aiken, South Carolina home, was a member of the Canadian men's modern pentathlon team, senior world championships in 1979, and coach of the Canadian men's modern pentathlon Olympic team, Seoul, South Korea in 1988. Dacre is married to Jen Stoker and is the father of two children. He is the executive director of the Aiken Land Conservancy. Had a great conversation with him about his work to conserve land. Really, really interesting stuff over lunch one time. So Dacre's a great guy, and as you can see on Fantastic Fiction, he is the grandnephew of Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker, of course, born in 1847, died in 1912. So he sought into the new century, now the old century, and his name, of course, was Abraham. Now, I've got some information. I'm going to be posting this for the Genetically Superior paid subscribers at the Gardner Goldsmith Substack. For fans of fiction, we're going to be building a library. Got a couple entries in there already on different authors and great suggestions for their work. And so since we're doing Wordsmith Wednesday, I wanted to talk about Dacre's work in addition to Bram's work. And that actually is a lot to discuss. So I'm going to focus on a couple things. One is to suggest to you to pick up Dracula by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker, I think his name is. And I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a fictional story that covers Bram Stoker's childhood. And Bram Stoker was so ill, they weren't sure if he was going to be able to walk. From about the age of 7 years, as he started to recover, he not only learned how to walk, he became an incredible athlete, like record-holding athlete. In addition to that, He got a master's in mathematics and went on to support one of the most popular theater actors of the time. In fact, named one of his children after that theater actor. So I want to show you a little bit about Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, and the notes for Dracula started when Bram Stoker was basically a teenager. And what's really interesting is you can see, if you read the biographical information about Bram Stoker, and it's because of Dacre Stoker's research in Ireland and in other places that they discovered some of these documents. Hundreds of pages of Bram Stoker doing research about Eastern European legends, about history and things where he could fit what was the germinating story of Dracula. Interestingly enough, he lived essentially right across the street from Sheridan Le Fanu, who wrote Camilla. And Camilla was, this is in Ireland, was, of course, one of the early vampire stories. So there's a lot of fascinating stuff. In fact, Bram Stoker married a woman who had dated Oscar Wilde. I don't know what the deal was with Oscar Wilde, but Oscar Wilde, of course, the writer of The Picture of Dorian Gray. And just, an amazingly witty person. So let me give you some background information about Bram Stoker. And then to close things off, I'm going to play you the opening of a video that I hope you will find. I will retweet it or re-exit. But if you're one of the paid subscribers, it's actually embedded in the paid subscriber thing at my Substack. It's an interview with Dacre. And but I want to give you some background information about Bram that is going to be, I have to finish it off and sort of polish it up and so on. But it's going to be one of our, special biographical things that I write about and give suggestions for writers. But here we go. Abraham Bram Stoker, the author who gave the world one of literature's most enduring monsters, lived a life shaped by resilience, theater, at a time when theater, well, you're coming from a family that's doctors and lawyers and things like that. Do you really want to get into that? Well, he got into the theater after he established himself in other areas, and a quiet scholarly obsession to do things right. In fact, he's responsible for codifying many of the sort of popular laws. He wrote down many of the popular laws in some of the Irish counties. Very interesting stuff. And I think Dacre actually found the original of that. So he was an amazing dude. He was born Abraham Stoker on November 8th, 1847, in Clontarf, a seaside suburb of Dublin, Ireland. He was the third of 7 children in a Protestant middle-class family. His father, Abraham Sr., worked as a civil servant at Dublin Castle, of all places. His mother, Charlotte Thornley, filled young Bram's ears with Irish folklore and ghost stories. A mysterious childhood illness left him bedridden and unable to stand until age 7. And that's where I highly recommend you pick up Dracula. I'll show you what it looks like before we go. But really, if the first 40 or 50 pages of that, of him as that 6 or 7-year-old child and the nurse who comes in to try to help him and what he goes through, it's really great. It's some of the imagery in it is really terrific. It's just great. Wonderful. Once he recovered, he astonished everyone by becoming an outstanding athlete. At Trinity College, Dublin, which he entered in 1864 at the age of 17, maybe 16, Stoker earned a Bachelor of Arts in mathematics in 3 years. And later he got a Master's of Arts. So he got his bachelor's in 1870, and he got his master's in mathematics in 1875. And he was working at the time. He captained the rugby team, set athletic records, and rose to leadership roles as auditor of the College Historical Society and president of the University Philosophical Society. And of course, he came around at a time when we know that the Theosophy movement was very big, and people like Madame Blavatsky were coming around, some of those folks, and Conan Doyle was very interested in those things. And he was good. Conan Doyle was good friends with, of course, the skeptic Houdini. And so that's a fascinating period. And, well, of all things, not only was he president of the University Philosophical Society, after graduation, he followed his father into the civil service at Dublin Castle. He served there for nearly 10 years. So he had the idea for Dracula when he was a teenager, but he continued to work, setting himself up. In his spare time, he wrote unpaid drama criticism for the Dublin Evening Mail, a glowing, and this was the key. This was the key that allowed him to go to London. It was when he wrote a review in 1876 of actor Henry Irving's Hamlet performance. After that, evidently, Irving heard about it, and he and Irving struck up a friendship. He ended up working for Irving's theater in London. And that was a point where, Stoker's family saying, do you really want to do this? But Stoker's wife actually encouraged him, which is wonderful, wonderful stuff. So in 1878, Stoker's life changed dramatically. He married Florence Balcombe, a celebrated Dublin beauty who had once been courted by Oscar Wilde. And he accepted Irving, the actor, Henry Irving's offer to become business manager of the Lyceum Theatre in London's West End. Imagine that. The couple moved to England, and their only child, named after Henry Irving, Irving Noel Thornley Stoker, was born the following year. For the next 27 years, Stoker handled actor Henry Irving's immense correspondence and theater productions. And they even traveled internationally. He organized provincial and American tours and moved comfortably among London's literary and artistic elite. By the way, I think he was best man at Conan Doyle's wedding. I think that's what it was. I think he was best man at Conan Doyle's wedding. Despite the exhausting theater schedule, Stoker wrote steadily. His first book, never give up, everybody. His first book, a practical civil service manual called The Duties of Clerks of Petty Sessions in Ireland, appeared in 1879. Big bestseller, I'm sure. Then he actually published a children's story collection called Under the Sunset, and that came out in 1881. His debut novel was a romantic thriller. And if you watch this whole video, you'll actually see Dacre holds up a copy of it. It's called The Snake's Pass. And it was published in 1890. And then that same year, while on holiday in Yorkshire, the coastal town of Whitby, he discovered the name Dracula in a library book on Eastern European history that he found inside the Whitby Library. Over the next several years, Stoker filled more than 100 pages of notes with vampire folklore, studying it, geography, making sure it was right, and medical details. And one of the things that Dacre brings up, which you won't see in this video because it's down the line in the video, and I don't want to show the whole thing, it's their stuff. But I just sort of want to tantalize you if you're here on a Wednesday. If you get the opportunity, you might want to check it out at lunchtime or something, and pick up some of Bram Stoker's stuff. Over the course of the next month, I'm going to start reading some of Bram Stoker's short stories for you, and some Conan Doyle short stories too. But we're going to open up more days to reading after the end of the show, just for some comfort. And by the way, some of the stories might not finish. We might do like part 1 and part 2 because they might be a little bit longer. But one of the interesting things is that at the time, Eastern Europe, basically beyond maybe, as you got into Poland, it was basically considered, like the Black Forest of the world, like unexplored territory. And so that was the unexplored realm for Europeans. So it had tons of mystery, gypsies, the werewolf mythology, lots of mythology. And so Conan Doyle knew that in order to make this an exotic place that really would be very strange for people, he tied in his ability to do things for the theater, which was to connect up with getting licenses to go to places and do traveling and things like that, work with lawyers and stuff like that, and moving people places to stay places. So then he took Harker and he said, okay, I'm going to make Harker one of these people who is arranging Dracula's sale and movement over to the UK. I'm going to be handling the land deals for Dracula. So he got familiar with these things, and then he had to familiarize himself with these areas. And still, very interesting, because he knew that they would be very, very mysterious to people. What is out there in the East? So over the next several years, he filled more than 100 pages of notes with vampire folklore, geography, and medical details. Much of the actual writing occurred during summer stays in Cruden Bay in Scotland. Dracula was published May 26, 1897, by Archibald Constable and Company in London. Presented as a mosaic of letters, diary entries, and newspaper clippings and transcripts, the novel introduced Count Dracula and established many of the conventions of modern vampire fiction. Though initial sales were modest and Stoker remained better known as Irving's manager than as a novelist, the book's publication marked the high point of his Victorian literary career. In fewer than 400 pages, he had fused his childhood fears, theatrical instincts, and years of research into a Gothic masterpiece that would outlive himself and define an entire genre. So true. Now, let me show you this fascinating interview. Well, first off, let me show you again. There's Bram Stoker, thanks to the good people at Fantastic Fiction. And I know I'm wearing a Frankenstein shirt, but yeah. So there you go. Lots of good stuff. There's The Snake's Pass, 1890, you can see. Dracula, 1897. Lair of the White Worm, that's a strange movie. I haven't read the actual book on that one because the movie is just bizarre, very strange. And yeah, so that's Bram Stoker, good stuff from Bram Stoker. And of course, his great-nephew, Dacre, is doing amazing things. So I want to show you the book that I highly recommend, Dracula. This one right here. J.D. Barker and Dacre Stoker. It is really, really good. And Josh Mallory, you can see Josh gave it a good review too. Scary as hell, he said. Dracula the Undead is a sequel to Dracula. And then there's Dracula in Transylvania, which I believe is a theatrical play. Epic play in 3 acts. Yeah. So Dacre's been involved with all of those things. And I actually have an audio interview with Dacre that's over on my old podcast for Liberty Conspiracy when it was just audio. And Dacre's a really, really nice guy, really decent dude. So let me show you inside this, one of my favorite channels on YouTube. It's really, really interesting. I think you'll enjoy it. Things Visible and Invisible.
In 1870s Dublin, a young man with ink-stained fingers and a restless heart began to record his hopes, his longings, and his fears. Now those private pages lie open, the raw, unguarded thoughts of the man who would one day give us a monster. Let's explore the lost journal of Bram Stoker here on Things Visible and Invisible. Dacre Stoker is an internationally best-selling author. He is also the great-grand-nephew of Bram Stoker, author of Dracula. As well as managing the Bram Stoker estate, he has authored a number of vampire-inspired novels, as well as the non-fiction, The Lost Journal of Bram Stoker, The Dublin Years. And he joins me down the line from his home in South Carolina. Dacre, welcome to Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you, Sean. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, it's a great pleasure to have such an illustrious name on the show. We've had Bela Lugosi's descendants on the show, and now we've got Bram Stoker's descendants on the show. Before we get into all of the more serious side of your work and your research, Dacre, what was it like growing up knowing you were a descendant of the man who gave us Dracula?
Well, I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and of course, we celebrate the great tradition that Ireland sent over to Canada with Halloween. And around that time of the year, people would come to the door of our household going, "Ooh, the Stoker household, what's going to happen? Are you going to give us candy or take our blood?" And I, it was dumbfounding to me what they were talking about until about the age of 12 or 13 years old when I asked my dad, what are they talking about? And he said, well, son, it's time to show you. So he brought me to the family library and pulled out a first edition of Dracula, the one that's been passed on down from Bram to his mother, to one of the other brothers, and then to my dad, Desmond. And then he told me, he said, look, this is our famous relative who, wrote this novel. And this is back, in the late 60s. So it wasn't that big a deal for us, because many people knew Dracula, but not many people in those days knew Bram Stoker. And that all changed as I got more involved in writing my stories and digging deep into it. So at the beginning, it wasn't that big a deal, but it has become a bigger deal. And I take the responsibility seriously to try to actually help create the creation of Dracula, of Bram being Dracula, try to put some perspective to who the man was, so that the creator is somewhat on equal terms to his creation.
Well, I could absolutely concur with that, Dacre. In the many years that I have been reading about and writing about occasionally the myth, the mythos of Dracula, the figure of Bram Stoker increasingly becomes more intriguing, if I can put it like that, than his creation. He's a man of many, many parts and many, many lives almost. But he's also a man who kind of eludes clear definition. I don't know if you mean. I mean, I've read a number of biographies on Bram Stoker. Is he a man that you feel you understand?
I do now. I feel I understand him very well after doing much what you have done. Read the biographies, take those in perspective, because some of them tend to get very sensational, to sell books. But since I found his journal in the Isle of Wight, and I found many letters back and forth between him and other key players in his life, and also found the Dracula typescript with certain things crossed out, and the Dracula notes, I have much better idea of who Bram was, what his life was like, and it is enlightening to understand this man who's given us, not just Dracula, but many other books in the supernatural that really reflected a sign of the times of when he lived, the late Victorian era in London, the theater manager that he was, that what he chose to put pen to paper about were certain situations with purpose, as you mentioned, that he was capitalizing on real fears, real issues and sensitivities, but he actually packaged his vampire novel in a way that nobody has ever did before or after, in a way that made his Count Dracula arriving on the shores of Whitby in a very realistic format, which really scared the heck out of people.
Well, I'm sure you're familiar. I think it was Ernest Hemingway said it, that all fiction is ultimately autobiography. So I'm very interested to get into some of that with you, Dacre, in terms of my own ideas and your ideas of maybe what was going on inside Bram Stoker's head when he was writing his most famous novel. But as you say, there were other interesting books. But before we do that, I want to backtrack a little bit, because I'm sure you're aware that in some of the biographies, Stoker's Irish background is either glossed over very quickly, and then the move to London and all the rest of it, the more glamorous side of things. Other people then have sort of posited him as a kind of, in a sort of resurgent neo-Celtic romanticism of the 19th century in Ireland. You've studied this period of his life. The Lost Journal of Bram Stoker, The Dublin Years, is your creation on that. What conclusions have you come to about the Irish genesis of this man and indeed of Dracula?
Well, because there's no autobiography written, and that would have made it simple if we could actually, listen to what Bram had to say about himself and his Irish upbringing. That would be an easy answer. But it's not. So what we have to do is look at the circumstantial evidence and say, what was he leaning towards? What caught his eye? And by analyzing his Lost Journal, I could see that he was very interested and concerned about all matters around him, growing up when he was a young boy in Clontarf, then at Trinity College, and then working at Dublin Castle. So he was very interested in the plight of the common man and woman. social issues that were going on at the time. But he was also interested in looking at life through a different lens. He was a bit of a dreamer. Even though he had that legal side of him, to me, there is this man somewhat conflicted between the detail-oriented side that was the clerk of the Petty Sessions Legal Department and later the inspector. He is Jonathan Harker, I have to tell you, Sean. There's no question he inserted himself in the novel this way, traveling around the country, making sure all the details of legal arrangements are correct, much like Jonathan Harker did going to Transylvania to make sure all Count Dracula's legal transactions for buying his properties in London were correct. But Bram was also an artist. He was a founding member of the Dublin Painting and Sketching Club. He won some awards as a young boy at the Dublin Hibernian Society. And he started writing prose and poetry and romanticism in this journal of his. So this was a man that sort of combined those things as he looked at life through the lens that really only a person who has this sort of duality side to his brain, looking at things as they are, but then creating them in a sensational manner so that it brings attraction to it.
So we'll just pause it there with a little bit more, maybe later when we read Bram Stoker's short story. And I will highly recommend that you pick up Dracula by Dacre Stoker because it's terrific. It's just such a great, great story. Dracul. And I'm getting a cramp in my left leg right now. I apologize. Oh, boy. I'm sorry. Wow. Holy smoke. Wow. Okay. That's intense. Sorry about that, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Wow. I guess that's a sign to call it a night, everybody. Well, anyway, I hope you all have a terrific night. Wow. Today was one of those headache days, too. Oh, my goodness. Wow. But we got through the show. We did some good stuff, and we got the information out there about some fascinating things. And I want to thank everybody for being over there at Rumble. Just terrific conversation with people. I want to thank Eric Peters for being our guest. What a terrific guy Eric is. And North American House Hippo, thank you for your support. Anybody who supports the show, thank you. We're going to do a lot more. And on Friday, we're going to be reading a cool short story. I can't wait to tell you about it. And I might even have the new story, Call, done. And then I'll be wrapping up Tower, and they're all going to get ready for publication. We'll tell you about that in a little while as I massage my leg and get ready to go. I'll leave you with the Outer Limits outro. Of course, it is the control voice, our friends from the Outer Limits, giving you control back to you in your home. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you at my Substack.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.